Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Lynch, for appearing here today and for your service as Attorney General. I'm sure that many of my Republican colleagues will spend their time discussing the overhyped matter concerning Secretary Clinton's emails, but I'm going to focus instead on more important issues facing this country. We're all sickened by the killings of Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge and Philandro Castile outside of St. Paul. According to the ACLU, Mr. Castile was the 123rd African-American to be killed by law enforcement this year. That is, of course, no excuse for last week's vicious murders of 5 police officers in Dallas. But the knowledge that Mr. Sterling's and Mr. Castile's deaths come on the heels of a long list of senseless killings of black men, women, and children whose encounters with the police might have gone differently had they not been black must spur us to take action. Black Lives Matter is not a hashtag, it is an imperative. And I appreciate the work that you are doing and your department is doing in this regard, and I hope you'll keep us informed on that. But I want to go to a different matter, related, unfortunately. Exactly 1 month ago today, a lone gunman killed 49 people and wounded more than 50 others in an LGBT nightclub in Orlando. Mass shootings are now an all too common occurrence in this country. In 2016, there were 229 mass shootings, defined as shootings in which at least 4 people are shot. As you know, every day, on average, nearly 300 Americans are shot in murders, assaults, suicide attempts, accidents, and police actions. 48 of them are children and teenagers. This is a distinctly American problem. More than 33,000 Americans lose their lives to gun violence each year. In the United Kingdom, in 2011, 146 deaths to gun violence. Denmark, 71. Portugal, 142. Japan, just 30. The United States, 33,000. You cannot tell me, no one can tell me, that the American people are 1,000 times more mentally ill than people in these other countries. A recent study in the American Journal of Medicine found that compared to 22 other high-income countries, the gun-related murder rate in the United States is 25 times higher. We have held there is an epidemic of gun violence. And how has the majority in Congress responded? With emergency hearings about Hillary Clinton's and Lois Lerner's emails. We have held, of course, 0 hearings on gun violence. We have passed no bills to address the issue. We have done nothing to require universal background checks. We continue to allow military-style assault weapons on our streets. We have not even prevented those on the no-fly list from purchasing guns. That's why I was proud to join John Lewis and nearly the entire Democratic caucus in protesting the Republican Congress's abdication on this issue. Now, Ms. Lynch, what does the assassination of 5 Dallas police officers last week tell us about the NRA's favorite adage, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun? The police officers, after all, were armed. And what about an armed society is a polite society?
Well, Congressman, thank you for raising this important issue of gun violence in our society. I don't have a comment on the NRA's positions or statements, but of course—
What about that state, never mind their position, but what do you think of the statement that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun? Is that true? Does it work?
You know, Congressman, I think the issue is, as is usual, doesn't really lend itself well to aphorisms and short statements. And it's my hope that the work of many on this committee and indeed throughout Congress in having the discussion that has begun on this issue will continue, so that we can in fact continue to work on the serious issues of access to firearms in our society. Earlier this year, I did make several recommendations to the White House which were accepted for important ways for dealing with this issue, ranging from clarifying guidance on those who are engaged in the business and therefore must provide background checks for purchasers, ranging from clarifying rules on acquisitions of certain types of firearms and by those in certain business capacities such as trusts, but also as part of that, a very important part of that was a request for additional funding for ATF, for more resources to deal with the information and the issues arising out of gun violence, as well as funding for HHS to deal with the issues of mental health that place so many Americans in jeopardy.
A loophole in federal law allows the transfer of a firearm to anybody after 3 business days, even if a background check is not complete. Last year, the FBI concluded that the suspect in the shooting in Charleston was able to purchase a gun through this loophole. Should that policy change? Should we hold the transfer of firearms until the background check has been completed?
Well, Congressman, in order to change that rule, it would require congressional action. The 3-day waiting period is part of congressional action that has already been voted on by Congress. And certainly, it is a fact that with the rise in purchases and the increased use on the NICS background system, there is ever more use of that system. We are working to improve the NICS system to make it as efficient as possible. We've expanded the number of personnel working on those background checks. We are working also to improve the automated portion of the NICS system so that the dealers who go through the system will be able to get information more quickly and to be able to respond either by proceeding or denying a sale or in other ways as appropriate. So we are working within the system as it is currently structured. In order to change that, it would require congressional action.
Thank you. My time is expiring, but I wanted to briefly mention one more issue. We have been following the Department's review of the consent decrees that govern ASCAP and BMI. There are reports that the Department is not recommending any changes to the consent decrees, but is moving forward with an interpretation of the decrees requiring these organizations to license works on a 100% basis instead of the current practice of fractional licensing, in conflict with the formal opinion of the U.S. Register of Copyrights. I have heard from numerous songwriters and constituents greatly concerned about the disruption this will cause in the industry and to the creative process. Several of the parties involved have raised a host of other issues related to the consent decrees as well. Can you clarify for the committee the status of the Department's review of the consent decrees and the process moving forward?
Time of the gentleman has expired. The witness will be permitted to briefly answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Congressman. The Antitrust Division is engaged in a review of the consent decree, which I believe dates to 1941. It has been utilizing a public comment system. After going through an initial round and receiving public comments, another round of public comments was also opened. Those comments are still being reviewed. Stakeholders are being consulted with, and it's my understanding that the Antitrust Division will be wrapping up this matter shortly and will be making public its findings, and we will, of course, make sure that they're made available to Congress. I believe they would be in any event provided to you, but we will certainly make sure that they are provided to you.
Thank you very much.